We're learning more about the GOP plan for funding a massive transportation initiative. It may fall more than $100 million short of the money state leaders say they need. Where will the rest of the money come from? We'll have a live report from the Capitol. Then State Senator Renee Unterman joins us to discuss her key legislation, protecting teenagers caught in sex trafficking rings, and more. Lawmakers starts right now. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nigut. It is day 17 of the 2015 session. Tonight, she's made it her mission to protect Georgians who may not be able to protect themselves. Senator Renee Unterman joins us to talk about safe harbor, autism, and other legislative goals. But first, Pat St. Clair brings us up to speed on what's been happening at the Capitol today. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Bill. Well, there is progress to report today on House Bill 170, that massive transportation funding legislation. It has been approved by the House Transportation Committee with a couple of amendments and then sent on to the full House for consideration. Transportation Chair Jay Roberts says if Georgia doesn't move forward on transportation, it will send the wrong message.
We're going to ask all those in favor to let it be known by raising your right hand. And we'll take a count.
The ayes had it after about an hour and a half of discussion on a couple of amendments to the bill. The main change deals with the amount of money local governments can still collect on their local option sales taxes. Transportation Chairman Jay Roberts made a final pitch for the committee to approve the bill, saying if Georgia doesn't move forward on transportation, it will send the wrong message.
Other states around us, other states throughout the U.S., are facing the exact same issues that we're facing. They've either addressed them or they are addressing them. We're not by ourselves. But I can tell you that investment is what's going to help us continue to sell the state of Georgia from an economic development standpoint.
You're out of committee with the amendments. How are you feeling about it?
Well, I think this is another good first step. I mean, we're moving through the process. We've made it through the subcommittee process. Now we've made it through the full committee process. The next step is on the floor of the House. So we're still working on that. I've not had a decision as to yet when we'll be trying to bring it out, but we'll continue to work it. And once we get it through the House, then we'll continue to address it on the Senate side. It's still a work in progress.
Roberts says he expects changes once the Senate has a chance to review the bill, and that it will likely end up in a conference committee to work out any differences that might remain. Have you ever thought about how much it costs you personally to drive on Atlanta's aging roadways? Well, maybe not, but TRIP, a national transportation research group, has done the calculations. The study found that more than half of major roads in Atlanta are in poor or mediocre condition. Research Director Rocky Moretti says the problems cost Metro Atlanta drivers nearly $2,000 annually, which he says adds up to about $8 billion a year.
That is basically lost time. That's traffic crashes, sometimes fatal traffic crashes that could have been avoided if the roads had a variety of better safety features. And quite candidly, driving on rough roads, which are beating up your vehicles, which means you're going in for more repairs and unfortunately back to the showroom sooner than you'd like to look at a new vehicle.
The study says those transportation costs will keep rising unless there is increased funding for the state's infrastructure system. Of course, Georgia lawmakers are currently tussling with a proposed billion-dollar transportation bill. Moretti says that's a good start.
It needs to, on an ongoing level, make improvements in pavement conditions, fixing bridges, getting ahead of a challenge that quite candidly is getting worse as the system ages and we're seeing continued increases in travel, and then systematically making the type of roadway safety improvements here in the Atlanta area but statewide that are going to keep people safer.
Moretti says his group travels the country studying transportation needs. They found that when people understand the transportation challenges and what it costs them, they understand that if they make the needed investments, they actually are going to save money. The debate over advanced placement, or AP history, was the sole topic of a joint House and Senate Education Committee hearing today. Some lawmakers are concerned that the AP History exam presents a revisionist view of American history. In fact, earlier this month, the Georgia Senate introduced a resolution condemning the revised AP History framework and demanding that the College Board, which administers the test, return to its 2007 framework. Stanley Kurtz is a conservative commentator and senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He told the committee that in making changes to the AP History framework, the College Board is promoting a revisionist agenda.
The framework de-emphasizes or completely eliminates themes like the intellectual background of our constitutional system, the principles of the free enterprise system, the unique role of faith traditions in American society as opposed to more secular European societies, and America's emphasis on state and local governments within a federalist system in contrast to the more centralized states of Europe. All of these things are part of what is sometimes called American exceptionalism, the qualities that make America distinctive and, yes, admirable as a country.
The College Board's Trevor Packer leads the AP program. He explained to the committee why the board removed the term American exceptionalism from the AP History framework.
If you do a Google search for American exceptionalism, you'll see all sorts of articles tracing the term back to communists in the 1920s, talking about how negative America is. So our committee thought, we don't want students memorizing a term. We want students to actually study examples of American exceptionalism. It is not negative to claim that the United States developed the world's first modern mass democracy. It is not negative to claim that America's establishment of the ideals of self-government and personal liberty served as inspiration for the rest of the world. These things are American exceptionalism. We want these things. Our committee felt it was more appropriate to make sure that there was clarity about examples of American exceptionalism than simply to insert the term. But that said, we're happy to reinstate the term if our stakeholders feel that would be helpful.
No action was taken at today's committee meeting. The College Board is taking public comments through February 28th. Packer says the final framework will be completed in July. That's it for us here, Bill. We'll throw it back to you.
Pat, thanks so much for the report. We're very happy to welcome to the set tonight Senator Renee Unterman. She's a Republican in her 16th year at the state capitol. Also joining us, Greg Bluestein, political writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He contributes to the daily blog Political Insider, a must-read if you follow politics in the legislature. And Howard Franklin, who is a Democratic strategist and has run campaigns for many candidates here in Georgia. Thank you all for being here. Senator Unterman, we're very happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
We're going to talk in a little while, more about the latest in the transportation bill that came out of the House committee. But having you here is a great opportunity for us to talk about the bills that you have been championing, not just this session, but for years in some cases.
Right.
Let's start, though, with a bill that's been very close to your heart. That's the bill that relates to sex trafficking and teenagers caught up in it. You passed that bill through the Senate. It's heading over there to the House where they'll take a look at it too. What is that? Why is that bill so important to you?
That bill's very important because a couple of years ago we had House Bill 200, which was Representative Ed Lindsey. And you know, the state of Georgia is judged by national clearinghouses on child safety and child welfare. And when we first started out in the state of Georgia, we were listed as a D across the whole United States, across all the states. A D is in dog, and now we've been elevated to a B. So we had the historic bill just a few years ago. And now we have another historic bill. And we're continuing to set the foundation of taking care of children. And you were talking about teenagers, but unfortunately, I'm talking about kids that are 10, 11, and 12 years old. Yes, that are sex trafficked, not just in Atlanta, but across the whole state of Georgia.
But it is fair to say, and I think there's been a lot of publicity about this, that Atlanta really is a center for sexual trade.
Yes, we're one of the top 14 states in the United States, Atlanta is, and we rank right up there with Las Vegas, New York, and it's really based upon the airport. We have one of the busiest airports in the world, and it's also based upon the convention and trade, because we've always been a paper city and people come here to have a good time, and it's based upon that.
Let's bring Greg and Howard into the conversation as well. Greg, Senator Unterman, and you can weigh in on this, of course, was very hopeful that a provision in that bill would grant immunity from prosecution to young people who are caught in sex trafficking rings. but she got some lobbying opposition from who?
Well, from across the spectrum is my guess. And I was going to ask you, what is different about this push, aside from taking that part out of that provision?
Well,
But it was the prosecuting attorney's counsel, I
Yes, it
believe, that
was.
really went after you, saying that they did not want to see prostitution given any kind of break, right?
where they say that you're legalizing prostitution
Yes.
because you're turning a blind eye. And I say no, that every child is a victim. And if you ask a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old little girl, what do you want to be when you grow up? They don't tell you, I want to live on the street, I want to be hungry, and I want to grow up and be a prostitute. They say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an astronaut. And it's not just little girls, it's little boys too.
Sure.
And unfortunately, we make sausage at the General Assembly, and I had to take that provision out. And it wasn't just the Prosecuting Attorney's Council, it was the far right who has reservations about it. And I understand that, and I'm willing to compromise because I'm looking at the better good and the better welfare of taking care of children.
So how do you then, without that immunity provision, what does your bill do in the interests of those young people who are trapped?
Well, we're still going after the pimps, and that's one of the main things. We go after their cars because that's what they value the most. We go after their assets. We change the statute of limitations. We're adhering to federal guidelines. The Congress just passed this past summer guidelines where each state must turn in statistics. We're achieving that goal. So we're accomplishing a lot. The sexual offender registry, there's a loophole in it right now where you do not, if you're convicted of harming a child with child abuse or sexual exploitation, you're not listed on the sexual offender registry. If we accomplish one thing, and it would be just closing that loophole, that would be a great thing.
Howard Franklin, you're a Democrat. You're on the opposite side of some issues with Senator Unterman. But whatever your political point of view, she takes on bipartisan issues and does it from a position of real heart. Yes?
Absolutely. Something to be applauded. And I think, it's the reason that, voters can be proud of the folks they send down to the state capitol. And I'd also say for this legislation, I think it's part of the reason that you got 52 votes in the Senate. And I think hopefully we'll see something similar like in terms of a vote count in the House. I will mention one thing. I mean, it seems like the prosecutors and their lobby have flexed some political muscle this year, whether it's on medical marijuana, whether it's on this issue. And I do think it's important to be thoughtful about, again, unintended consequences, but it seems like something that, hopefully we'll come back and look at if it makes for more teeth or more effective legislation going forward.
This has been a big issue, but if there's one that, as I observe you at least, that seems to me to be closest to your heart, it's the work you've done over the years on passing legislation that would give parents of autism coverage in health insurance policies. Right. And that comes from a very personal place in your heart.
Yes, it does. I had a child who was autistic. And, I think it goes back to my roots. I'm a nurse from Grady Hospital. I'm a social worker. I really care about children. And I, in particular, care about the elderly, the vulnerable. And, it's just a product of that. But I can tell you one of the people that has really pushed this issue is Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. And I think leadership starts at the top. The governor and the first lady have cared about children. Then you have a lieutenant governor. And it's just a natural progression that the Senate has taken up children's issue all the way through for the past probably about 5 years.
And again, this is an issue that you've managed to put through the Senate.
Yes.
It too is over at the House.
The House.
Talk about pushback, Greg Bluestein. Over there in the House, where some providers, insurance companies, really don't like this bill, there's likely to be some significant pushback. Yes?
Yeah, it was held up last year over concerns that this was an unfunded mandate. There's not money in the budget to do this. And you're going to see it again this year. I mean, these are bills that pass overwhelmingly in the Senate. I think this one was unanimous, and,
yes, it was.
And your other bill was 52-3. Yet they end up being used, for better or for worse, as bargaining chips as both chambers, figure out what their priorities are, and they hold these until the very
I was going to. Yeah, that's a good point. Are you expecting that we're going to be on day 40 at 11 p.m.
Yes.
dealing with this issue?
Yes, and I think it's all issues. I mean, when you have big things like transportation, education, health care, it's just a natural progression, and that's just part of the General Assembly and the way we function.
Do you have some strong allies in the House, especially among people who are in leadership positions, to work with you on this, or are you looking for House help?
No, I'm looking for house help. I'm always looking for house help. But I do believe on autism specifically, I know that if it gets to a vote on the House floor, it will pass. I know automatically it will pass.
You just said an important thing. If it makes it on the
Yes.
calendar, if the Rules
Yes.
Committee allows it through, and that's always the question, isn't it, Howard Franklin? So let's turn to another issue that you've given some consideration to this year. We've all paid a lot of attention to Alan Peake's medical marijuana
Yes, we
bill.
have.
And he's still working hard to get it passed over in the House. But you have a medical marijuana initiative on the Senate side that's much more narrowly focused. His now has a list of conditions that would qualify, whereas you're working on one thing and one thing only.
Yes, I'm looking at immunity. And I have been working with Representative Peake. We met all summer, all fall. We traveled throughout the whole state of Georgia. And we're picking up where the Senate left off last April. And it is an immunity, and it's specifically for children with epileptic seizures.
Children. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And why go that route? I mean, Peake includes, I think, epilepsy in his longer list of conditions. Why focus narrowly? Why not just go with that whole list?
Well, he has a whole list of diagnosis, and I think when you get back to the prosecutors and law enforcement and sheriffs and the police chief, they're all opposed to that because they see that as a march towards decriminalization and legalization of marijuana.
Okay, stay with us.
Okay.
We've got a few other things to attend to in the next couple minutes, but we look forward to having you comment on other matters that took place down at the Capitol.
you.
So, Senator Underman, we're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
In other news from the Gold Dome today, there was a unanimous vote in the Senate on SB 58, the Georgia Leadership and Service Act. The bill would set up a way for high school students to get college funding help because of their service in institutions like ROTC. Republican Hunter Hill of Atlanta explains.
We all often get calls from our constituents saying, can you help my son or daughter get into college? And our response now can be, well, yes, we can if they're willing to serve their country. I think it's a great thing for the individual to be able to serve their country. I know I got a lot of benefits out of my service. And this mechanism allows for us to encourage that service within our community. It helps our country. It helps our state. And ultimately, it'll help that individual if they so choose to pursue an ROTC scholarship.
And that bill now goes to the House for consideration. Still ahead tonight on Lawmakers, it's no secret that the state needs to make a major commitment to repairing and adding to Georgia's transportation system. Of course, the big trick is how are we going to pay for it? Back with the latest thoughts on that when Lawmakers continues. On this date in 1960, Georgia Governor Ernest Vanderveer signed legislation that made it unlawful to refuse to leave a business upon request by the owner or manager of the establishment. The General Assembly enacted the law as a response to the growing wave of sit-ins being staged across the South as part of the civil rights movement. Welcome back to Lawmakers. Our guests tonight, Republican Senator Renee Unterman, Greg Bluestein, political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and Howard Franklin, a Democratic strategist. And we're glad, Senator, that you wanted to stay for this broader conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Let's talk very briefly, if we can, about the Transportation Committee meeting this afternoon. There was some, we thought maybe, that this fiscal note, which shows that the state is, this plan is about $150 million short of the billion they need, that we might see more from the chairman about a bigger effort to figure out where to get that money from. It didn't happen.
Yeah, one of the big takeaways is that what was left unchanged was the 29.2 cent excise tax on per gallon of gasoline. There's been a lot of talk that will inevitably be higher to help the state sort of shoulder more of the burden on raising these taxes for transportation.
But nobody seems willing, I mean, at this point at least, to add that to the table. Certainly they could have today in the Education Committee.
The Transportation Committee. Yeah.
I mean the Transportation
Yeah, as you heard
Committee.
Chairman Roberts said, this is another first step, and there's been a lot of first steps in this process. But it will be changed again. I mean, it next goes to the Rules Committee, where it can be changed again on amendment. Then the House floor, it can be changed again. So we're seeing a lot of iterations, and then we certainly know it will be changed once it gets over to the Senate.
Well, and that's the question. You're going to get this bill eventually.
Exactly.
And
we're very excited. We've been, very interested in the House to see what the House is going to do with it. But of course, we're sitting back. It's very interesting in the Senate. We have a lot of former mayors and a lot of former county commissioners. So we're very interested in local government. The other thing that I'm very interested in is healthcare and education, because those are the two predominant uses of the budget. So if you're going to go somewhere else and pluck some money from someplace else, then you're going to have to go into education and healthcare. And that's very, very difficult to do because you have to supplant the money.
so let me make sure I hear this correctly. If the bill comes to you by taking some of the funding away from local municipalities, you're likely to push back. There's going to be some pushback.
I think there already has been pushback
Well, there's
in the House.
pushback in the House, absolutely.
Yes.
But when it comes to the Senate, you're going to look at it with some skepticism.
Oh, yes.
And what's the
definitely.
solution?
Well, you have to find new additional money, and that's why, as the chairman of the Health Committee, I've been protecting the health money.
Okay.
And that's part of the battle at the General Assembly. What pot do you take the money out of? And that's the problem.
Howard Franklin, this bill from the end of last year all the way to today has been touted as probably the single most significant measure that will come before the General Assembly this session. And it is beginning to look like it's going to be very tough to pass anything.
I would agree. I think part of that is maybe revisiting the issue of the T-Splosh and some of the other failed attempts at, making a broad stroke that would fix transportation. But I do think, as we start to see a little more of the nitty-gritty on some of these individual projects, that there will be, another second wind, if you will. And I do wonder, in terms of the level of priority, where we can continue to place it as it is losing steam and gaining detractors.
There is some effort, Greg Bluestein, and you can correct me on this, to try to find a way. We know that the measure as now crafted would take away from municipalities and counties some of that tax which they are now getting on gasoline. But there is an effort now to figure out a way to divert some funds for school buses and other transportation-related school issues that could help them in return. Yes?
Yeah, the latest version allows school systems that get special local option sales taxes for education purposes to take revenue raised by gas taxes and put them towards school buses, fuel, those types of costs that were being spent out of their operation funds. So that's a measure to placate the school boards that were already raising some concerns about this measure.
Okay, so just to be clear, some of those local gas taxes are going to fund education and other issues that you care a lot about.
If you take a county like Gwinnett County that has 172,000 kids in the school system, and we have one of the most successful e-Splosh and Splosh votes in the country, and you're jeopardizing those referendum votes, then you're really cutting into something that is very near and dear to our hearts.
Are you a betting woman, Senator, at all?
Well, we got a gambling bill coming.
What's your guess? Is this transportation package going to make it all the way to the governor's desk?
Well, I know that it's a very important priority of the governor and the lieutenant governor, and any time that is a prioritization, that filters down to the legislators. But just like you said, this is an omnibus bill and it's very difficult. I wouldn't be surprised if it took 2 years. I would be very happy for it to happen in one session, but I wouldn't be surprised in 2 years. But I do know, and I can tell you, the number one issue in my district in Gwinnett County is transportation.
Well, what's interesting about the possibility, and we're hearing more of this, that it could be a 2-year initiative. Isn't this, Howard, from a political point of view, isn't this the year when the newly reelected governor really has the power to get things done? by the next year, he's starting to move into that lame duck territory.
Sure, and I don't know if he'll be moving into lame duck quite that quickly.
Well, no, you know what I'm saying. I mean, the longer he goes past re-election.
Tons of political capital right now. I mean, sweeping re-election for the entire Republican ticket.
Right.
Et cetera. So I don't disagree. I do think, at a certain point, you've got to start having conversations with a bill this big and sweeping about bringing different allies into the fold. And I was at today's Transportation Committee hearing, and, there were questions from Democrats and others about other priorities that they didn't see or they saw getting short shrift as the legislation was currently written.
This is a legislature that takes its time on issues and has spent years even just debating the T-Splost issue back in that finally passed in 4 or 5 years ago. And remember, there's a lot of political capital on the table, but there's also limited bandwidth. On one hand, the governor also wants a school takeover bill, which is going to take a tremendous.
And I want to do that real quick because we're very short on time. Right now, when you see the governor's education bill and what he plans to do to help failing schools, are you on board?
We're definitely on board. And if you look at the signatures of the senators, it was the majority of the senators. It's a constitutional amendment. You have to have 2/3, and I believe 2/3 have already signed on to that bill.
The Senate seems assured of passage.
Yes, we're very confident.
It's across the aisle where your friends in the House may have a little more trouble with this. Do you think?
I'm not sure what occurs over there, but I do know that I do know the Senate is very confident in it. We know that you can't keep going down the road and saying that things are bad and not do something about it. You can't keep doing the same old thing the same old way and expect different results. And we're ready to reform and to make a change.
Of course, the issue on the House side is probably going to need a little bit more Democratic help to get it through over there than they need in the Senate.
And I think that's part of the reason that we saw the governor sort of scale back in terms of the number of schools that might be in their scopes in terms of this takeover and this makeover in a lot of ways. So maybe a scaled back proposal with a couple dozen schools might be easier for us to bite off as a pilot program.
I also assume it's a reason that the governor seems so sanguine about the Democratic plan he introduced and said, well, I'm willing to listen to some of their options. Yes, he wants to make it clear that Democrats are welcome at the table.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, the key number today is 38, and that was the number of co-sponsors on the on the Senate plan. 37 Republicans, 1 Democrat. He'll need a lot more Democrats, it seems, on the House side to sign on to the plan to get it passed over there.
Okay, let's move on to another issue. Today in the House, they passed a bill that was going to help people with aids to threaten suicide. Freshman Representative Albert Reeves is the sponsor of the legislation. The bill is very serious business, but it's a tradition for legislators to have a little fun, even in such a difficult time, with a freshman who introduces his first bill.
This bill assures that somebody who is suicidal and has AIDS or HIV gets the same help that everybody else does.
This bill is only a page and a quarter. Can you tell the House members here how many pages your notes were that you just read from?
4, but it's big font, so.
All right, having fun, but with a very, very serious subject. I want to thank you, Senator Unterman,
thank you so much
for being
having
here.
Me.
Howard Franklin, Greg Bluestein, always a pleasure to have you here as well. So day 17 of the 2015 session is a wrap. Tomorrow we're back with a look at Senator Josh McCoon's version of the Religious Liberties Bill and a key component that makes it somewhat different. We'll also take a look at what it took to bring the new Liberty Plaza into existence. In the meantime, stay in touch with us on social media, or you can email us at lawmakers@gpb.org. Send us your comments and questions, and thanks so much for being with us for Lawmakers tonight. Have a great evening.
This is a GPB original production.